The rematriation journey is a matriarchal process. It is something that connects to the way of our ancestors. It is not an individual journey. It is not just something that we do alone. And even if there are those who are traveling alone on their journeys, it is always about how we move with the collective. How does our journey work with the collective and benefit the collective? Saludos and welcome to the Rematriating Boriken podcast, where we discuss the journey to the essence of these islands, this archipelago and her surrounding waters, the restoration of our essence before conquest and continued colonialism, the reclamation of our collective healing and liberation. I am Yasmin Hernandez, creator of Cucubanación, artist, writer, activist, born and raised in Brooklyn, Rematriating Boriken.
We set out with babies in tow in search of the violated womb, because if we return to her, we can wage reciprocal healing. The images that I include on the slate for this episode are of each of my sons. The one of my youngest son, the one on the left of the image, is where I include this quote that I just read about returning to the violated womb to wage reciprocal healing. Each referencing the abyss creature of the anglerfish. I include both of these on the slate for this episode because I am reflecting very heavily between my son, my oldest son, having come here to start kindergarten 12 years ago and now about to start the 12th grade. And that is how we opened up the month of May, and we ended the month of May with my youngest son's 8th grade graduation. So this episode is inspired by them. It is a big up to our family and our journey that began in New York City and continues today still in Borikén. Hola everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Rematriating Boriken podcast. I guess in general, this will be a reflection on the month of May 2026. So everything that May represents for us, including Mother's Day, and for those who are graduating from something, from little babies graduating from pre-K or kinder. My youngest is about to enter 9th grade, about to enter high school. And then our oldest is about to enter 12th grade. So May literally opened up for us on May 1st was what's called his move-up ceremony, where the school recognizes the graduating seniors, but then moves up the 2 grades before. So it recognizes the juniors who will become seniors, as happened with my son. And it also recognizes the sophomores who are becoming juniors. And I love it. I love that schools here are very serious about graduation, about prom, about education. Even though I have had to severely reconsider not my thoughts around education. Education is important for everyone. My thoughts around the education system, I should say. Considering other cultural pillars, cosa como la quinceañera, ¿verdad? Y que when my son turned 15, there is no quinceañera for boys. There's no rites of passage. And we consider the rites of passage ceremonies that our people have lost along the way, have practiced, and that we have lost along the way.
It hit me that he's starting the 12th grade, which means that we're going into our 12 years here in Puerto Rico. It is a reminder that we moved here, which is something that I will never forget, but that we moved here when we did in May of 2014, wanting to get to Puerto Rico specifically before the schools closed, because we were looking for a school for him to start kindergarten. And here we are, about to watch this child enter the 12th grade, his last year of high school. And it is the closing of a cycle. And it is a cycle that reminds me that the rematriation journey, all of it is a matriarchal process. It is something that connects to the way of our ancestors. It is not an individual journey. It is not just something that we do alone. And even if there are those who are traveling alone on their journeys, it is always about how we move with the collective. How does our journey work with the collective and benefit the collective?
In this process of rematriation, in this journey, it has been incredibly important for me to acknowledge the anniversary of when we made our move and to mark what it meant to leave one life behind or to leave one place behind. In many respects, a place can carry a whole life, a whole series of experiences and communities that mark one life and then usher you into the next. Or as Matthew, one of the people who I painted in the Rematriating Boriken Portraits from the Trench series, but also person who is often at the space here at Cucubanacion, he talked about from one womb to the next, right? Like the traumas of relocation from one womb to the next. I will always call Brooklyn my womb. I have a deep, profound love for Brooklyn and for the land and the waters that surround Brooklyn and Queens and that island, because we know that the name Brooklyn, we know that the name Queens, these are all colonial imports, right? So we see that one island as it's one entity, and within that one island, which is massive, the varied ecosystems that exist on it. So recognizing the marshlands that are very common in the southern coastline around Jamaica Bay, which is where I grew up, between Coney Island and the Rockaways, Sheep's Head Bay, and all those places that I would go to in Brooklyn. But reflections on May, for those of us also celebrating Mother's Day in May. What resounded this month is that we made 12 years in Puerto Rico since we made the decision to arrive in May, with the specific purpose of arriving at that time so that we could find a school to register our oldest son for kinder, knowing that part of our move required that we get him into school. Like we had this huge milestone for him that we were going to choose to put him in school and do so for kinder. And that if we started that process in New York, that it could delay our move, or it would make his transition a lot more difficult. And what I mean by that is that if he had started school in New York City, started school speaking with kids in English, making his friends, adapting to a certain school system and environment, then to pull him out from that and then immerse him in an environment where the kids were all speaking Spanish and, things were just different, the environment was different, that would be much more difficult for him and for us. And so we made the decision to leave in May when we did. And so this month, with his move-up ceremony on May 1st, celebrating his ascension to the 12th grade, it just marked all of a sudden our anniversary here in Borikén had a whole other spin. And it was always our anniversary of when we did this deed, when we moved, when we sacrificed, when we did the unthinkable, because that's what it was considered back then. But to now have that number marked and coincide with the grades that this kid has accomplished, right? Started in kinder, is about to go into the 12th grade, which lets us know that we soon would have completed a full cycle, not just 12 years in Borikén, sino también acknowledging that we have put our child successfully through school. Now, wanting a bilingual school for him, we made the decision to put him into a private school, something that never would have been a reality in New York City. because of the differences in like the financial realities between what schools cost there versus what schools cost here. But the other thing is acknowledging the sacrifice of what it is to say, we're going to put our children through private school, not even having come here with work lined up, with financial security, none of that. And so regardless of the reality that we were living, what it meant to commit these 12 years to having one and then two children in private school, where we can handpick what the experience would be for our children, knowing that we were coming into a place where colonialism was the order of the day, where teachers would teach a colonial history, where school books may be a product of the empire. And these are all realities that we've lived throughout this experience, and I've touched upon them in different episodes. But the other thing that I want to just point out here is something that is not often spoken of when people think about rematriation as it pertains to the archipelago of Borikén. And that is that for many, this move aspect of the rematriation journey. Let me reiterate what I mean here. I don't see rematriation as a move. I used to say, I rematriated in May of whatever. I don't say that anymore, because it's like I say, rematriation is a journey, and it is a long journey, and it is not a geopolitical journey only. So that journey happens in spirit. It happens where we are. It happens when we arrive here. It happens with a decision and a choice that we make. It happens first. In order to embody any other place, it would be best to embody our own selves, to reclaim our own bodies, reclaim our own identity, reclaim our own history. And that work is done in your own body, wherever your body happens to stand. And so what I say now is that for me to have arrived here in May of 2014, I had to have started the rematriation process long before. There is a whole journey that takes place before you make the choice to get on a plane with a one-way ticket. In this case, here, right? Now, rematriation as a practice, as a movement, as a lifestyle, is a couple of things that I always say, and I'll just say them repeatedly because they're necessary to know. If this is the one episode you ever hear of this podcast, that you leave with me having imparted this belief or this thing that I've learned along the way, which is that rematriation lifted by the indigenous people of Turtle Island. So there are people who are talking about rematriation as a return to their ancestral ways, not necessarily their ancestral lands. There are people who may be living on their ancestral lands. A reservation may not necessarily be ancestral lands, because it was the empire who determined what the reservation is. Not every indigenous person or First Nation person on Turtle Island is living on a reservation or is living on their ancestral land. And so this idea of rematriation may be about returning the sacred aspects to all lands, recognizing that all those lands, Turtle Island comprising what is being occupied today by the U.S. and Canada, we're talking about immense amounts of territory, of land, of water. Rematriation also has to do with seed. It has to do with food sovereignty. It has to do with returning to the ancestral foods and the foods that are also native to those lands, that can be grown in ways that are sustainable, in ways that they can thrive, these crops together, that they don't strip from the lands, that they add to the land, that they work in harmony with the land, that they work in harmony with our bodies to nurture us the way that we should be nourished and nurtured, that we work in harmony with waters, the different bodies of water, that we work in harmony with animals, that we work in harmony with all things in nature, and that we are a part of nature and not here as the rulers of everything and the owners of everything, right? So all of these things can be rematriation and are rematriation. Rematriation is not just packing your maleta, getting on a plane and moving to the land of your ancestors. It's one part of that journey. It's a huge part of that journey. But it's not to say that you cannot partake in rematriation if for whatever reason you cannot make the move. If you cannot make the move for caretaking reasons, for survival reasons, like there's a certain illness that you are working through and need to be in a particular geographical place where you can find the best care for yourself. None of these things say that you cannot rematriate. You can continue that process in the way that most works for you. So, a dejar eso ahí bien claro. One of the things that is not discussed often, and that is part of this May reflection that I'm offering here as a mother and as a person who came with 2 babies, ages 2 and 5, so that they can start school here, is that not enough conversation for those using rematriation as a hashtag and talking about this as a move and talking about coming here and setting up here and farming here, and is that not everyone is making this journey with children and babies. And for those of us who are not, it is also the importance of bearing in mind that there are children being brought, the importance of recognizing the impact on children, the impact on younger humans who, because of their age, don't get to decide where they want to live. Don't get to determine for the family, this is where I'm staying, this is where I want to be. Those are usually conversations that parents have and decide for the family. So the importance of recognizing how all of these things impact children. There are many of us talking about this journey as a political journey, as an activist journey, and these things are all true, but these things also shift dramatically when they involve caring for children, when they involve babies, when they involve the care of a mother or a person who is pregnant or birthing or nursing, the person and the people who are raising children, and then another aspect of all of this, which is the people who are caretaking in whatever way that means. So caretaking a family member that perhaps has a disability that's requiring caretaking, a loved one who may have a health condition that requires caretaking, or caretaking for loved ones who are aging and are in need of caretakers. In my case, I am still doing, and I am what we call the sandwich generation of what it is to do both, that we are still raising kids, we're raising children, while at the same time, we've already begun the work of caretaking for our parents. And that shifts the whole dynamic dramatically, because all of a sudden you're not as available as you may have been once upon a time, and being down for whatever marcha, down for whatever mobilization, down to show up at whatever event to assist whatever people. And how I used to live my life in my 20s and much of my 30s, where I was like showing up at everything or organizing stuff. And people's relationship to you also shifts when your availability is not what it used to be. You start to realize that people start to take that shit personally, like, or this person is not as comprometida, this person is not as available, this person is not as around. How come we never hang out? How come we never go to the beach? How come we never go chill at a restaurant? How come we can't get brunch? Pero es un detalle que cuando uno vive con una familia and every hour of your day virtually is you're navigating or negotiating the schedules of various people, of various appointments, of various work, requirements, various school requirements, and all of that, then your availability is a lot different than what it might have once been. And so I guess I offer this for those of us with different circumstances. Not everybody is raising children. Not everybody is caretaking. Not everybody is partnered. Some of us are here living alone, and that brings a whole other set of unique experiences and challenges. And also caretaking brings its unique experiences and challenges, and raising children brings its unique experiences and challenges. but the importance that is part of this journey, that we are able to hold that diversity, that varied, the varied paths of this journey, or of this move, or of what it means to live here, right? So it's not just those of us migrating, it's those of us who have always lived here, who may not necessarily have certain amenities elsewhere, so that it's not as simple to say, está pasando tal cosa, let me go get an appointment elsewhere. Or I have it like that to get a plane ticket, to get an appointment elsewhere, right? There are people who have been here all the time for whom it is much harder to have the access to go and seek services or resources elsewhere. These are all the different phases of rematriation. And some of the different phases of rematriation also include these babies, these children who were living perhaps in a city one day and wake up the next day in a tropical place getting all bit up by mosquitoes, like my poor 2-year-old who was breaking out in welts and eczema.
As I contemplate these intersections between mothering, caretaking, and the activism that is necessary here in these times and all times, especially in any colony or any place that is presided by or occupied by or tampered with an empire, and a falling empire to boot, which has all sorts of other implications, all sorts of ridicule, all sorts of drastic measures that it's resorting to as it recognizes that its power is limited, that its power is reaching the end of its timeline. I think of the struggles happening today in our natural resources, around our coastlines, around our forests, around our hills, around our caves and aquifers, our mogotes. I think of developers both here and elsewhere who come here, who believe that the answer to power and wealth is to literally flatten these resources. I think of these machines, these bulldozers, these graders, these loaders, and how they chip away at land, move land, flatten land, to put commercial centers in their place, to put condos in their place. And I wonder of the lovelessness, the love deficit of the developers and the investors. It's an extreme violence. And when in order to possess the land, it's not enough to preside over it as a colonial entity, as an empire. It is to possess the land by destroying it, by erasing its essence, its characteristics, its terrain, its elevations, its geographical features, and putting in its place something artificial, something temporary, something manufactured, something man-made. It's an extreme violence. It's an extreme expression of powerlessness and insecurity that would cause one to go to a whole different end of the spectrum in how they're going to carry out their possession of this place. And rightfully so, everyone is rallying. Not everyone, because enough people are still on the developer side. The government, and many up in there with her, although she still has people resigning and choosing not to be involved. But you're talking about government officials and people of these islands, born and raised on these islands, wishing to come here, wishing to exploit in the same way, wishing to collaborate with the colonizer in order to approximate to the colonizer, in order to appeal more to the colonizer, in order to fulfill their wish for statehood. And again, it is a lovelessness, it is a love deficit, it is an insecurity, it is an inferiority complex, all these things taught by colonialism, where one believes that in order to be of merit, In order to be of value, in order to be safe, you must fuse your tie to the oppressor, to the empire. It is seeking that same power that the oppressor has used to subjugate you, to subjugate your lands, to subjugate your resources, to subjugate your power. You seek not your own power, not to restore your essence. You want their essence, which is fused with this hunger, with this thirst for power, for possession, for domination. All under the umbrella of white supremacy and Christian extremism. I think of those doing the work of raising children and raising babies, moving humans from fetuses to adults, and then caring for aging adults. Something that is so undervalued, something that is so under-supported, especially in a colony where healthcare and education are under attack. It leaves those of us parenting having to become advocates, lawyers almost, to fight for the education that our children deserve. And those of us who are caretaking, becoming equal advocates, functioning as nurses sometimes, taking on medical responsibilities that we have no idea, because that is not our field. That is not what we study. That is not our expertise. But in the absence of those services and the availability of those services, we're left to fill in the gaps. And so as I think about May and reflect on May, how May started with my oldest son, that we moved here in time to get him into a kinder or registered in May before those schools closed, cosa que when August came, él iba a arrancar con ese año escolar. As we started this May with him finishing 11th grade and moving up to the 12th grade, 2 weeks before we celebrated our 12th anniversary here in Borikén. And as my family closes out the month with our second son graduating from the 8th grade, in between that 12-year anniversary, the same weekend that we celebrated Mother's Day, was it? Más o menos. This overlap of caring for our babies, caretaking for our elders, education, wellness and health, and the protection of our lands and natural resources, and the caring for our babies, the caring for our elders, the caring for our own selves, whichever age we happen to be, has to be as crucial a movement as it is protecting the coastlines, protecting the forests, protecting whatever creatures, protecting whatever natural resources. We are our own natural resources as well. And I say this for these random hierarchies that colonialism may sort us out into, where there are some who believe that they're doing more because they're active here, because they went to this event, they went to that event, and where were you? Yo no te vi ahí, ta, ta, ta. Y eso, sin considerar that everybody plays a role in their own way. The teacher, the poet, the musician, the artist, the subversive, the environmental activist, the liberation, freedom fighter, the elder who imparts wisdom and preserves tradition and teaches it on, and the babies and children who take those traditions and expand them into today's reality and continue them on. I have been removing myself more and more from social media spaces. I've had this really weird relationship with social media in recent years, and especially in the past year. And it's that relationship of coming in and out of it's like doing the hokey pokey for those people from my age when we used to dance and when we put your left foot in, you take your left foot out, you put your left foot in and you shake it all about. Like como que estoy a veces y no quiero estar. A veces entro, luego me salgo y me desaparezco. And then maybe I'll come back later. I have 3 accounts on IG. Sometimes I'll be on one account for 6 months and the other 2 are just there fending for themselves. It destroys my algorithm. I post some shit, quien sabe quien lo va a ver. Part of the reason is just this perpetuating this need to profess everything, to share everything, which is sometimes just crazy to me. Understanding the history of surveillance in our communities, surveillance, infiltration, and so much more. But what is most concerning to me is how we start to position ourselves relative to one another. I'm doing this, I'm doing this. This is mine, this is mine. And then it becomes this profession. And it reminds me of life after Hurricane Maria, where we were so lost. I'm not going to say we, because I'm in a weird position here. This is my observation of what I saw from those who did not live through Maria. My observation was that there was such a survivor's guilt for those who did not live through Maria, that they became obsessive around how they would support from beyond. And sometimes that wasn't enough. So then they became obsessive with getting here, even though getting here could be more dangerous or could be more problematic in terms of visiting people who already did not have resources. Like there was enough water to flush one family's kaki, let alone you adding your dump to it. There wasn't enough water to drink for a family, letting alone welcoming visitors. Sometimes there is a despair that comes with colonialism that we do not know what to do with. And the way that unfolds is with this need via these social media outlets to do a public profession of what has been done to quantify and qualify your commitment to your people publicly via these social media outlets. And my question is, how much are we doing to process it within? How much are we sitting alone to feel the discomfort and to feel the despair so that we could move through it, so that we could sort the lessons that emerge from it? And how often are we sitting in intimate spaces, not on social media, where then some troll or some white supremacist will get on there and then start trying to attack people? No, a safe space. That's what a sanctuary is. Sanctuary spaces and safe spaces. You get yourself 1 person, 2, 3, 4, 5 people that you trust, and you discuss it intimately with them. Antes de tirarte en las redes a postearlo todo. So that our every thought, our every idea, and our every strategy is available, not just to the masses, but to the enemy. So in this contemplation of me, thinking of my own babies and Mother's Day as my being a mother and Mother's Day as the mother that I help caretake, or that I caretake because I'm the only relative here. I'm the only adult blood relative of my mother on this soil that she has as contact. And the responsibility, el compromiso, and the understanding, the commitment that brings. And so my main reflection is that we consider the true interdependence of our family networks, whether by birth, by blood, or by choice. Our neighborly networks of who lives next to us and around us. That we see each other, that we support each other, that we can build a trust of our communities. Many of our communities are chosen. The people that we work with, the people that we organize with, the people that have similar ideas and similar passions and similar struggles. Because these are all the microcosms of pueblo y nación. And so for those of us talking about liberation or liberated futures or liberated nation or free Puerto Rico or free anything, it's again that work, that inner work that allows us to show up more consciously, strategically and deliberately in interdependence with other people and other communities as we build these possibilities for the collective. And so what that means is that we stop believing that this cause is the cause and the only cause. That we stop shaming people for not being in places because we don't know who they're feeding at home. We don't know if they have enough to feed. We don't know who they're caretaking for at home. We don't know if that person they're caretaking for has the medications they need, the amenities they need, the doctors they need, the services, the resources they need. One animal, one coastline, one resource, one struggle is not more important than one life. It is understanding the interdependence of the variety of struggles that are there. So you have some people and some groups focusing on the continued femicides. There have been 3 in the news this month. If we're talking about the month of May, there was just another femicide suicide. There are those who will tackle the issue from a feminist standpoint, a humanist standpoint, to consider and understand why the patriarchy is causing our men to kill women and then kill themselves. That we are all resources worthy of being tended to, worthy of being fixed and healed. Because some of us are in a deep despair. It is considering the freedoms and the privileges with which some of us move back and forth wherever we want. Maybe we don't have the responsibilities of caring for other humans, or we always do on this earth. Even when we think we don't, every other human is our responsibility. But that you don't have that person in your house depending on you to be fed and being taken to the hospital if necessary. And that it's okay then to show up at some mobilization and be the only person there. And you don't recognize no one else. Use that moment and represent for those who cannot be there, because there will be a day where you can't be there either. And then you will trust that others will be there for you. There's a lot of questions being asked of each other and not enough questions being asked of our own selves. It is giving grace to our own selves, and it is giving grace to each other. When all of a sudden someone is not there where you expect them to be, or someone is not calling as much as you want them to. And a lot of people have a lot of questions about the availability of someone, yet there's very little calls being made to that someone, checking in, how you been. There's a lot of demands being made, a few check-ins for what someone is actually needing and not able to get. So this May in Rematriation, if there's anything that we're to restore and get back from the ancestors, from this land in its essence prior to conquest. It is the harmony that existed here before others came to possess it. How do we restore the harmony, even while still occupied? How do we live that in our own lifetime? How do we live that day to day in our own lives? How do we bring that into existence by our own actions? In closing, I want to say thank you to the people who joined the virtual conversation on 10 years of the Rematriating Boriken project. And it was a very interesting group because although it was virtual and the access was more than if we just did it at Cucubanación, all the people who joined, we were all folks that had come from the diaspora and were now living in Borikén. So we all had a similar experience. In the past, we've had people living in the diaspora or people living here that have always lived here, and just a mix. And this time we were actually what I used to envision the beginnings of the Rematriation gathering. It's like for people like me who are from the diaspora and then came to live here without trying. That's what we got. And it was an intimate group, and it was in that intimacy that common experience that there was a confianza that just bloomed in that conversation. And it just gives me más ánimo or inspiration for the possibilities of what it means when we gather and build in that way. Just again, that reminder of building sanctuary, building those intimate spaces. If you want to be included in future conversations virtually or even in person, send an email with your information or any particular requests to rematriatingboriken@gmail.com. It's rematriatingboriken@gmail.com. Rematriatingboriken.com is the website with an events page where I post these events and also with other info there if you would like to learn more about the project.
In this episode, I reference my nene's 8th grade graduation, and I recorded the majority of this episode before the graduation happened, which was on May 29th. Since then, I wrote a blog post with reflections on that event, on just everything that it meant to witness. It sent me down memory lane back to when I was a Brooklyn teen. And I recognized that that was when my rematriation journey started. So it was the commitment that I made at 16 years old to start pursuing our suppressed history. And so with seeing this beautiful gathering of these 13 and 14-year-olds graduating aquí in Borikén, and if you are interested in reading about that experience and the reflections that it inspired, you can check out the blog at rematriatingboriken.com. That blog, by the way, turns 10 this summer in July. July 25th was when I posted that first blog post. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to that. And the little blog is where the whole concept of Rematriating Boriken began. And so if you want to support this work, if you want to support the message, the project, you can simply like this episode, like that post, that blog post. You can comment, you can share with others, and also subscribe if you want to be notified of future posts, whether here with this podcast or with the blog on the rematriatingboriken.com website. And as usual, you could find Rematriating Boriken on Instagram and also on Facebook, aunque tengo que confesar que I'm not as active on Facebook as I am on Instagram. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for supporting. Blessings always.